Canto 6. The Merger with the Supernal Divine. Shri Krishna said, "He who dutifully works without desire, him the expectations of fruits cannot cage. And he is said to be the sannyasi, the yogi, the real sage, not he who renounces actions and kindles not the sacrificial fire." This, O Arjuna, is what they call renunciation, the true state of yoga, the integral union. He is not a yogi who has renounced not desire, not the one whose mind yearns for objects to acquire. And for the ascending yogi, it is thus affirmed that action causes his ascent to be confirmed. And for he who has already ascended, self-mastery is the cause by which he has transcended. In his mind too, all attachments he has denounced. When all the wills within are renounced, if he is bereft of desires towards all objects of sense, the zenith of yoga, he has reached thence. The self alone can set the self free, if you allow it to unsuppressed be. For the self is the self's closest friend, and also the worst nemesis that the self can portend. The self as a friend can be thus considered when the lower self's pull has been conquered, but when the higher self one does not know, then the self is the self's greatest foe. The victor of the self experiences the perfect peace, and in that greatest oneness all fluctuations cease. Neither in heat or cold, nor in loss or gain, and in honor or dishonor finds not he glory or pain. With the self's gnosis poised he remains, unaffected by senses and tranquil in all planes, and regards alike clay, gold or stone. Towards all objects an equanimity is shown. The enemies or the friends who are dearest, sowers of discord or the careless or indifferent nearest, the holy saint or the wretched sinner, he who has won perceives is the ultimate progressor. The yogi should seclude and devote himself on immersing and becoming one with the Supreme Self. In his solitude, with mind and body in his control, free of desire, he should meditate on the soul. For this, a pure and clean place should be assigned, a position neither too high nor too low he may find. Meditating steadfast on the self, he must assume his seat, made of deerskin, kusha grass, or a natural cloth sheet. There, with a single-minded devotion that is firm, with his mind, a control over senses, he must affirm. On his asana, the seat, deeply absorbed in meditation, he must engage in his whole being's integral purification. Keeping the body, neck, head erect and immobile, a stable position he must take in this style, without his mind or eyes glancing in any other direction. On the nose's tip, he must focus his attention. With a peaceful mind that is without fear, the woe of celibacy he must bear. He must seek with his mind firmly in his control a merger into my consciousness as a whole. Towards the self, directing and channeling the mind. Always in yoga, that being when you find, the supreme peace attains he with the nirvana of Brahma that is founded in me. O Arjuna, understand this yoga's way, and to whom this path is barred, I verily say, it is certainly not for he who in sleep and food indulges, and also not for he who rigidly renounces both urges. All sorrows begin to cease and disappear when the state of yoga approaches near, wherein the sleep, awakening and food is in regulation, and works too when the mind engages in regulated action. When the mind and the intellect have perfectly converged, in the state of the self they have truly merged. When from all forms of desire he is liberated, the state of union or yoga he is said to have attained. Like the light of the lamp that burns with a steady face, motionless and still in a windless place, so too is the mind of the yogi or the awakened self, who has consciously attained mastery over himself. Where the mind is tamed by a disciplined will, by the awakened knowledge, it is purified and still, and the awakened being perceives the self by the self's gnosis, thus dwelling in the contented state of the Supreme's bliss. When the infinitely blissful self's truth is thus known, perceived beyond the domains that the senses can own, the yogi is established firmly in the awakened state. From the origins divine, such a being does not deviate. This is the gain of gains, the greatest treasure. Nothing is greater or even comparable in measure. When that unperturbed state is thoroughly gained, even by the worst grief, one can't be disturbed or pained. It is from the sufferings that the mind has to be freed. A union with the divine is yoga's true aim and need. An inseparable union is to be courageously sought, cheerfully bracing the hurdles by which the path is brought. Originating from the thoughts, the desires of every kind must be dispelled and banished from the mind. The senses that scatter the thoughts must be in control held. From dispersing to their whims, the mind must be withheld. Step by step, one must gradually turn inwards and think of nothing else that is outwards. With the intelligence focused in concentration, one must engage in the self's meditation. And every single time when the mind goes astray, becoming unsteady, and when it begins to sway, the mind must be reined in and secured, and the consciousness of the self must be reassured. A pure quietude, devoid of any strong emotion, is the gain of the seeker of the divine union. Attains he a gnosis of Brahma, the supreme realization, experiencing the infinite bliss of the soul's emancipation. When he is thus unblemished, passionless and free, constantly in the state of union he can be. Such a yogi is always in a state of highest joy, as the understanding of the Creator he can enjoy. Such a man who has attained the union universal acquires he a perspective equal and global, for he sees the self in all and all in the self, and he discriminates not others from himself. He who everywhere sees only me, and in everyone me only he can see. To him I can never lost be, and he is never lost to me. He who in every being's oneness believes firmly and loves me in every living being, truly. His action and living, whatsoever may be his way, he lives and acts in my consciousness every day. As the self's image, when everything he perceives, O Arjuna, in an equanimity and oneness he believes. In both joy and grief, a steadfast poise he retains. Becoming closest to me, the highest position he attains. Arjuna said, O Krishna, this yoga of oneness expounded by ye finds not any understanding or resonance with me. For its nuances I still cannot grasp or find. I am still feeling quite restless within my mind. Despite your words, my mind seems so restless. Its nature seems so stubborn and relentless. O Krishna, to tame it, I can't find a way. It seems as hard as controlling a wind blowing away. Lord Krishna spoke, O mighty armed one, taming the mind is difficult indeed, for its restless nature tries to always mislead. With regular practice, the mind can be trained, and with detachment, a control over it can be attained. When a control over self one cannot maintain, they fail in yoga, and a union they cannot attain. Through disciplined efforts, a mastery over self they can retain. With regulated practice, a control they can surely ascertain. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what happens to the one who goes astray? After embarking on the path of yoga, I wish to earnestly know. When despite his faith, a seeker's mind wanders away, if he fails to attain perfection, in the end, where does he go? When the human desires one fails to completely give up, and the union with Brahma, when he fails to keep up, O warrior mighty, does he not lose out on both lives here, and perish like a cloud that will only always disappear? This great uncertainty, O Krishna, you must dispel, and the smallest of my queries you must expel, for this seems to be the only way out, and you alone can destroy this grave doubt. Shri Krishna spoke, O Arjuna, know this, there is no destruction, neither in this life or the next, for there is no regression. For him who selflessly works for the greater good, no ultimate harm can befall him. May this be understood. The one who on the path of yoga falters attains the realm of the pious sentient beings, and after dwelling there for many years is once more born in the household of pure beings. Or he may be born in a yogi's house and in the family of the pious and wise, for it is a privilege so very rare to be born in a household with a spiritual air, and there he slowly assumes his previous birth status and resumes his yoga after an outer worldly hiatus, and his works gradually evolve towards perfection. O Arjuna, in yoga there is only ascension. By virtue from previous birth, his yoga is carried forward, and the soul is towards the science of union allured, and beyond the ritualistic practices, the seeker then ascends, and the principles of Vedas and Upanishads he verily transcends. But by concerted efforts and a sincerity in action, the seeker of union gravitates slowly towards perfection. Over a period of many births, he becomes sinless and purified, and with the knowledge highest, his endeavors are justified. In comparison to the firm ascetic, he is greater. Amongst men of knowledge and works too, he is better. He who practices yoga integrally is most superior for me. And so, a yogi is what, O Arjuna, I ask you to be. He whose inner self to me has been consecrated. For me, an infinite faith and love he has accommodated. Amongst all the yogis who hold the divine dear, he is in union with me, and to me he is most near. Thus ended the 6th canto of the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna taught Arjuna the way to divinize all life on earth, life on earth, life